The story of God resting on the seventh day after the act of creation is found in the first chapters of the book of Genesis. The narrative unfolds over 7 days, with the seventh day being a culmination of all that preceded it. This day of rest, or Sabbath, holds significant theological meaning in the Bible, especially regarding the nature of God, the created world, and the place of humanity within that creation. To fully understand the question of why did God rest on the seventh day, it's important to first explore the context of the creation account, and then examine the implications of God's rest. The 6 days of creation. Before arriving at the seventh day, the Bible describes the 6 days of creation in Genesis 1 and 2. These chapters paint a grand and orderly picture of God bringing the universe into existence through a series of creative acts, each marked by divine intention and purpose. 1. Day 1, God creates light, separating light from darkness, calling the light day, and the darkness night. 2. Day 2, God creates the sky, separating the waters above from the waters below. 3. Day 3, God forms dry land and seas, commanding the earth to bring forth vegetation, plants, trees, and all forms of plant life. 4. Day 4, God creates the sun, moon, and stars, placing them in the sky to govern day and night and to mark the passage of time. 5. Day 5, God creates sea creatures and birds, filling the waters and the sky with living beings. 6. Day 6, God creates land animals and finally, human beings in His own image, giving humanity dominion over all the earth. At the end of each day, the text reiterates, "And God saw that it was good." This refrain emphasizes that God's creation was not only functional but also beautiful, purposeful, and aligned with His divine will. The seventh day, God's rest. Genesis 2 verses 2-3 states, "By the seventh day God had finished the work He had been doing, so on the seventh day He rested from all His work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it He rested from all the work of creating that He had done." Here, the seventh day is distinct from the others. Instead of creating more, God ceases His work, blesses the day, and declares it holy. The act of rest on the seventh day raises profound questions. Why did God rest? Does an all-powerful, omnipotent God need to rest? If not, what was the purpose of this day? Why did God rest? There are several layers of meaning to the concept of God resting on the seventh day, ranging from the literal to the symbolic and theological. 1. Completion of creation. God's rest on the seventh day is first and foremost a sign of completion. The text tells us that by the seventh day, God had finished the work He was doing. In the biblical worldview, creation was not a chaotic or incomplete act. Each day of creation built upon the previous one, and on the seventh day, the work was done. God rested not because He was tired, but because there was nothing more to add. The universe, in its order, beauty, and functionality, was exactly as God intended it to be. God's rest, then, can be seen as a satisfaction in the perfection and completion of His creation. The refrain of, "It was good," culminates in a day of rest, where God reflects on the totality of His work and declares it complete. 2. A model for humanity. Another important reason for God's rest is that it serves as a model for humanity. Humans, created in God's image, are called to mirror God's pattern in their own lives. Later in Scripture, the concept of the Sabbath, a day of rest on the seventh day, is introduced to the people of Israel as a commandment. In Exodus 20 verses 8-11, part of the 10 Commandments, God says, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but He rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy." This command to observe a Sabbath rest is rooted in the pattern set by God in creation. By resting on the seventh day, God establishes a rhythm of work and rest that humans are meant to follow. The Sabbath becomes a gift to humanity, offering a time for rest, reflection, and reconnection with God. It is a recognition that work is good, but so is rest. In a world that often emphasizes constant productivity, the Sabbath reminds people that they are not defined solely by their labor. 3. Holiness and sanctification. The seventh day is also declared holy by God. This is the first time in Scripture that something is described as holy, and it is significant that this holiness is attached to a period of time, rather than a physical object or place. By making the seventh day holy, God sets it apart from the other days of the week. This sanctification of time points to the idea that certain moments are sacred, and that time itself can be a means of encountering the divine. For the Israelites, the Sabbath became a day set apart for worship, rest, and community. It was a day to cease from labor and to focus on spiritual renewal. By resting, people acknowledge their dependence on God, recognizing that it is He who sustains creation, not their own efforts. The holiness of the Sabbath serves as a reminder that life is more than work, and that God is the ultimate source of life and provision. 4. God's sovereignty and order. God's rest also signifies His sovereignty over creation. By resting on the seventh day, God demonstrates that He is not subject to the created order but stands above it. Unlike the gods of other ancient cultures, who are often depicted as struggling with creation or at the mercy of natural forces, the God of the Bible is portrayed as being in complete control. His rest is a display of His authority and mastery over the cosmos. Additionally, the creation account reflects a deep sense of order and structure. Each day of creation has a clear purpose, and the seventh day of rest completes that structure. In ancient Near Eastern cultures, rest was often associated with kingship. A king would rest after his enemies were defeated and his kingdom established. Similarly, God's rest on the seventh day can be seen as an act of divine kingship. His creative work is complete, and now He rests as the sovereign ruler over the universe He has made. 5. Foreshadowing future rest. Many theologians also see God's rest on the seventh day as a foreshadowing of a future, eternal rest. In the New Testament, the idea of Sabbath rest is expanded upon in the book of Hebrews. Hebrews 4 verses 9 to 10 says, "There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God, for anyone who enters God's rest also rests from their works, just as God did from His." This passage suggests that the rest God took on the seventh day points to a greater rest that awaits humanity, an eternal rest in God's presence. Just as God rested from His creative work, so too will those who follow Him enter into His rest, free from the burdens of sin, suffering, and labor. This eternal Sabbath is seen as the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan for creation. In conclusion, God's rest on the seventh day serves as a powerful and multifaceted symbol in the biblical narrative. It signifies the completion of creation, offers a model for human behavior, establishes a sense of holiness in time, demonstrates God's sovereignty, and points toward a future, eternal rest. God did not rest because He was tired, but because the act of creation was perfectly finished and the universe was functioning according to His divine plan. For humanity, the Sabbath becomes a day to reflect on God's work, to rest from labor, and to reconnect with the Creator. It is a reminder that life is not defined by endless work, but by the relationship with God and the peace that comes from knowing He is in control. Thus, the question of why God rested opens up profound theological insights into the nature of creation, the human condition, and the ultimate purpose of life in relationship with God.